Welcome, everyone. My name is Cordell Walton, along with Meredith Woodsell, Program Managers with CareWorks Comp. Today, we will be providing a quick update on the current changes within the workers' compensation and unemployment systems as it relates to the current COVID-19 state of emergency. The Ohio Bureau of Workers' Compensation, or BWC, has initiated temporary policy changes that will allow flexibility in the provision of care for injured workers as it relates to telemedicine and telephone services. The BWC will temporarily permit the injured worker's home as an acceptable origination site. The BWC will temporarily permit managed care organizations to authorize the use of telephone visits in place of face-to-face visits for injured workers. Prior authorization requirements. The BWC will waive prior authorization requirements for telephone services when the provider substitutes a phone call in place of a face-to-face visit for a previously approved service, or that provider who is rendering evaluation and management services substitutes a telephone call in place of a visit when they believe it will create an unnecessary or increased risk of exposure to either the injured worker or the provider. Billing and reimbursement. Telemedicine services that meet the guidelines will be reimbursed at the same rate as the equivalent face-to-face visits. Medical documentation. Under the temporary policy change, providers are required to reference the current state of emergency for COVID-19 and the intention to limit exposure of the injured worker or provider to COVID-19 and the delivery means of care either through telemedicine or telephone delivery, as well as the location or origination site of the injured worker, including the state if the injured worker does not reside in Ohio. The BWC announced that insurance premium installment payments due for March, April, and May for the current policy year may be deferred until June 1st. This is for public and private employers. The BWC will not lapse or cancel coverage or assess penalties for amounts not paid because of the COVID-19 pandemic. Installment payments due for the 3-month period total approximately $200 million in premium. On April 10th, the BWC Board of Directors approved to send up to $1.6 billion to Ohio employers this spring to ease the economic impact of COVID-19. This is great news for Ohio's economy as well as business community. The dividend equals approximately 100% of the premiums employers paid in the policy year 2018. The BWC will apply the dividend to an employer's outstanding balances first, including the recent installment premium deferrals. Of the $1.6 billion dividend, approximately $1.4 billion will go to private employers and approximately $200 million will go to local government taxing districts such as counties, cities, townships, and schools. Another change the BWC made was to waive all of the safety, education, and training requirements for this current policy year that began July 1st of 2019 and ends June 30th of this year. For private employers participating in the drug-free safety program EMCAP program, Grow Ohio, industry-specific safety program, one claim program, and the policy activity rebate program will automatically receive the discounts associated with those programs. Employers participating in the drug-free safety program have an annual report that's due each year. Typically, that is due the last day in March. The BWC has extended that deadline, and the new date for the annual report for the drug-free safety program will be due or extended until June 1st of this year. An important note is that the public employer program policy year runs congruent with the fiscal year, and therefore the BWC will review the trainings associated with those program requirements in June. The BWC also made changes to the Safety Council rebate for the fiscal year of 2020. As many know, the BWC directed Safety Council sponsors to cancel meetings for the months of March, April, May, and now June, and therefore the BWC will provide the rebate to members who have participated or attended in at least 4 meetings as of February 29th. So this determination was based on crediting each member with 1 meeting credit for each canceled meeting, the maximum of 2 external training credits, and waiving the CEO attendance and calendar year 2019 semi-annual report requirements. Ultimately, employers, the BWC determine who have earned the rebate under the revised guidelines will receive the maximum percentage rebate allowed for their BWC group rate and status. So it will be 2% for employers enrolled in the BWC's group retrospective rating program and eligible for the participation rebate. It will be 2% for employers enrolled in the BWC's group experience rating program and eligible for the performance bonus. There will be no claims data measurement calculation. It will be 4% for employers not enrolled in the BWC group rating program. As many employers have transitioned into having their employees work from home, there also comes concerns about coverage for their employees. We will say each claim is unique and will have its own set of facts to guide us. However, we have listed some general guidelines to keep in mind in the event that you have an employee or teleworker file a BWC claim application. The scenarios described below are not all-encompassing, but they should give you some direction as you investigate these instances. For example, a worker trips over their dog and injures their wrist while they're going to the bathroom. That would not be considered a compensable claim. If you have your teleworker taking a break, for example, and loads some dishes in the dishwasher and injures themselves, that would not be considered a compensable claim. Likewise, if your teleworker were to go for a walk outside of their home and trip on the steps or a sidewalk, that would not be considered a compensable claim because it's not work related. If you have your employee or teleworker get food poisoning from their lunch that they made earlier in the day, that would not be a compensable claim. Likewise, if your employee were to go to a drive-through restaurant during their lunch break and get into a car accident, that would not be considered a compensable claim. If you have your teleworker driving to the office or to a job site to pick up material or items they need to conduct their job, but on the way they happen to stop at a grocery store or a bank for a personal reason and essentially deviate from their normal routine, that would be considered not to be a compensable claim because it would not be work related. If you have your worker at home working from their desk or workstation and they reach for a folder or binder and injures their shoulder, that will be considered work related and could be compensable. If your teleworker is at home working from their desk area or workstation and they fall and injure their back, that will be considered work related and compensable. If you have your worker set up with a poor ergonomic arrangement or poor ergonomic workstation and develop tendinitis, that will be considered compensable. If you were to have your employee or worker go to the office or to your job site to pick up material to conduct their job and they get into a motor vehicle accident, that will be considered work related and therefore compensable.
Thank you so much, Cordell. And we're going to actually transition into the unemployment portion of the presentation. And so, as you probably are familiar, unemployment has been a really popular topic, and we know many of you have questions. And we've prepared this presentation to give you answers to the most common questions we have received at CareWorks Comp. And so we may not answer all of your questions today, but keep in mind at the end of the presentation, you'll have our contact information. And so you can reach out to us with any questions that you might have. And so many of you know that the governor has issued an executive order to make changes to the unemployment system to help individuals and businesses with the coronavirus pandemic here in Ohio. And so typically unemployment is there for individuals who are not under paid leave with their employer. But with the new provisions, individuals who have been quarantined by a medical professional or their employer would qualify for unemployment benefits. It also will apply to individuals whose employer has temporarily closed because of the pandemic. These workers would also qualify for unemployment benefits. And one of the most recent changes to the unemployment process is that during this time, employees do not need to be seeking work in order to draw unemployment benefits. So that is a change to the system. We're going to dive right into some of the most common questions that we've received here at CareWorks Comp. And the first one is, will employees qualify for unemployment benefits if COVID-19 causes the employer to shut down? And yes, unemployment normally works this way. When someone being out of work through no fault of their own, they would receive those benefits. There are typically eligibility requirements an employee would have to meet, but due to the passing of the CARES Act, that has changed. So we're going to be talking about that here and more in a minute. And then the next question, if my facility lays off employees due to the loss of production caused by COVID-19, will the employees be eligible for unemployment insurance benefits? And yes, if there's a loss in production, then yes, the employee would be eligible for unemployment benefits. If an employee receives unemployment benefits as a result of COVID-19 related business shutdown, will my unemployment taxes increase? And your account is not being charged. This is another provision that the governor has put in place to help employers control costs on unemployment claims being filed. If an asymptomatic employee imposes a self-quarantine because of the coronavirus, will they be eligible for unemployment benefits? And if they have been mandated to self-quarantine, then yes, they will be eligible. But we have heard from a lot of businesses that if they are open for business and their employees don't feel comfortable coming in, or they have been self-quarantined, in these type of scenarios, unemployment benefits aren't typically approved. But because the coronavirus has created such extenuating circumstances, we do believe ODJFS will investigate to see if the employer was able to keep the employees safe in their work environment. So, was that employer able to keep employees 6 feet apart? And if not, it is possible that ODJFS will allow the unemployment claim. So, it's very important that employers are following the guidelines set forth by the governor when employees are coming to work. And then, if an employee is in mandatory quarantine because of suspicion of having the coronavirus, will they be eligible for unemployment benefits? And yes, they would. If the coronavirus creates a situation that causes an employer to submit quarterly reports and payments late, will the filing deadline be extended? And right now, the reports are not due until the end of April, but ODJFS has said that they will be waiving any penalties if the reports are not completed on time. We encourage you to still report those on time if possible, but again, there will not be a penalty if you miss the end of April deadline for the first quarter filings. And does it matter how the person gets paid if they qualify for unemployment benefits? And whether or not they are hourly or salary under their current pay, if they qualify for unemployment benefits due to the coronavirus, then they would receive unemployment benefits. And then what happens if the employee is showing symptoms but isn't diagnosed or ordered to self-quarantine? Are they eligible and do I have to ask them to not return? And ideally, you should ask them to go home because they are exposing the workforce. But ultimately, it is up to you, the employer, but we would highly recommend that you send them home. And so, how do you calculate an employee's unemployment benefits? And with the passing of the CARES Act, a lot of people are becoming eligible that wouldn't normally be eligible. But typically, the Ohio Department of Jobs and Family Services says that an individual will earn about 50% of their average gross earnings. And ODJFS has a look back period that they call a base period. Right now, that look back period is the first, second, third, and fourth quarters of 2019. And ODJFS uses those quarters to find 20 weeks of wages through one or more employers with an average weekly wage of $269. So it may not just be your company that that employee is working for, but it could have been multiple employers. And then with the passing of the CARES Act, there are some expansions for those that typically have not been eligible. And it does include those who don't meet those earning minimum requirements, which are those 20 weeks of wages with an average weekly wage of $269. And ODJFS does say that unemployment benefits do vary depending on if that employee has dependents. And so the maximum benefit amount for an employee with no dependents is $480. And this is for someone that has an average weekly wage of $960. If an employee has one or two dependents, their maximum benefit amount is $582, and that's with an average weekly wage of $1,164. If an employee has three or more dependents, the maximum benefit will be about $647, and that's an average weekly wage of $1,294 during that base period. And we know that this is a moving target, especially with the passing of the CARES Act. We know that more people will be eligible, but again, we're just waiting on more information about the CARES Act and more details. If you have questions, please feel free to reach out to us because things can change since the recording of this presentation. And the next question is, I'm a manager at a hair salon and fortunately I've signed up for unemployment, but some of my stylists don't meet the $269 per week qualification. What are their other options? And the Federal Coronavirus Aid, Relief, and Economic Securities CARES Act creates a new program that provides benefits to individuals who historically have not qualified for unemployment compensation. So the Pandemic Unemployment Assistance Program authorizes benefits for individuals who have been partially or totally unemployed due to the coronavirus. And the benefit amount will be similar to the traditional unemployment benefits plus an additional $600. This new program is being built, but once it's up and running, benefits for eligible uh, employees or individuals will be retroactive back to January 27 for a period of 39 weeks. And then what does an employer need to submit as evidence that we've kept employees safe? And when someone files an unemployment claim, and if you disagree with it because you do feel that you were able to keep employees safe, then you need to protest that unemployment claim. And when you protest the claim, you need to provide the written description of actually how you kept that employee safe in the work environment. It is going to be up to the employer to explain the situation and how you feel it should be denied because your workplace was safe. Are employees required to use their vacation of PTO before filing for unemployment due to temporary layoffs? And no, the use of vacation time or PTO time during a temporary layoff is something the employer can decide on, but most employers in Ohio give the option to the employee but do not require it. And then if an employer informed their employees that their office was closing and the employee filed for unemployment, but the employer decides to keep the doors open, what does the employee need to do to cancel what they filed? And in order to cancel the claim, the employee could do that, but the employer could not. And when the employer receives the claim to respond to, that'll be the employer's opportunity to explain the circumstances. And that claim document is going to be your tool to communicate the situation to ODJFS. And even if you did notify ODJFS of a mass layoff and it did not take place, you can call them, but they may still request you put it in writing. And the best way to do that is going to be on that claim document. Employees are having difficulty filing claims. Will unemployment benefits be retroactive to the date that the employee tried to file the claim? And what we know is that there has been a huge influx of unemployment claims, and the ODJFS website has been having some extreme issues. But we have not officially heard that ODJFS will allow retroactive benefits for the time. So it is important that if someone is laid off of work, that they file for those benefits right away. The guidelines are changing, but as of right now, we have not been informed of the retroactivity of benefits. And then does the FMLA emergency expansion and the first, the Family First COVID Relief Act interfere with unemployment? And we are not aware of any direct integration between the two programs. If an individual is on paid leave and attempts to collect unemployment, we suggest that you notify your unemployment vendor. And if you don't outsource claims management or you don't have a vendor, you should immediately notify ODJFS and use their website to report potential claimant eligibility issue. If you have questions about this, please reach out to us. Our contact information is going to be here at the end of the presentation. And then lastly, does a person need to do anything to receive the federal additional $600 per week through the CARES Act, or will this be automatic if they're receiving unemployment benefits due to the coronavirus? And our current understanding is that individuals collecting state unemployment due to coronavirus will be eligible for the $600 federal supplement, but we are still waiting on details as to the next steps that claimants are going to be required to do. So at this time, we don't know what that is. And that is everything that we have for you today. We know that this is constantly changing and the recommendations for unemployment, potentially even Ohio workers' compensation is changing. So if you have questions, please feel free to reach out to us. You'll see our workers' compensation contact information here, as well as unemployment. If you would, just be understanding that we are having a huge influx of questions, and so we will address address your question just as soon as possible. But thank you so much again for tuning in today. And we're just, grateful to be a resource for you. So if you do have questions, please feel free to reach out to us. Thank you so much, and please stay safe.